There is a correlation between Dr. William James's quote in 1907 and present day, as he probably observed the behavior within the cultural climate of the medical and scientific field back in 1907. Indeed, this behavior must have been observed well before 1907 for him to witness how a new theory would be attacked and then proposed as absurd. Today, we see a similar behavior. However, the difference is that we have media and social media to accelerate the outcomes for those who may speak out or do anything outside acceptable norms within the medical or scientific fields. We need to go back in time to 1847, where the American Medical Association, the AMA, was founded.
The answer to this question may be found in some historic events that took place almost a century ago, when official medicine finally managed to gain the upper hand on the so-called empirical doctors, who cured patients with herbs and natural remedies.
In the 1800s, society sanctioned both approaches to healing. Patients had a choice of using either doctors, called allopaths, or natural healers, called empirics or homeopaths. The two groups waged a bitter philosophical debate. The allopathic doctors called their approach heroic medicine. They believed the physician must aggressively drive disease from the body. They based their practice on what they considered scientific theory. The allopaths used three main techniques. They bled the body to drain out the bad humors. They gave huge doses of toxic minerals like mercury and lead to displace the original disease. They also used surgery, but it was a brutal procedure before anesthesia and infection control. Few patients were willing to have surgery. Most patients feared allopathic methods altogether. Satirists of the day remarked that with allopathic treatment, the patient died of the cure. Competing with the doctors were the empiric healers. Contrary to the doctors, they believed in stimulating the body's own defenses to heal itself. Instead of poisonous minerals, they used vegetable products and non-toxic substances in small quantities. They especially favored herbs learned from Native American and old European traditions. The empirics said they based their remedies not on theory, but on observation and experience. Satirists of the day added that with empiric treatment, the patient died of the disease, not the cure. And the balance of medical power remained equal until the turn of the century. Then, new medical treatments emerged that were potentially very profitable. The AMA joined with strong financial forces to transform medicine into an industry. The fortunes of Carnegie, Morgan, and Rockefeller financed surgery, radiation, and synthetic drugs. They were to become the economic foundations of the new medical economy.
Now, from 1911, the medical profession had been treating 13 pathologies using ozone therapy. By the end of 1929, that number had reached 114 pathologies.
Surgery became viable with anesthesia and infection control, and doctors advocated expensive, radical operations. These in turn produced the need for a large, lucrative hospital system. Radium fever swept medicine. The price of radium rose 1,000% almost overnight. Another costly technological industry entered the hospital system. A drug industry grew out of the booming patent medicine business. The doctors changed educational standards and licensing regulations to exclude the empirics. Soon, only AMA-approved doctors could legally practice medicine. In a brief 20 years, the AMA came to dominate medical practice. Organized Medicine launched a media campaign to associate the empirics with quacks. The code word for competition was quackery.
In 1933, the AMA set out a mandate to eliminate any medical treatment that undermined or deemed too competitive to pharmaceutical drug therapy. This marked the beginning of the suppression of natural medicines, natural therapies, including ozone therapy. Once the AMA had established every doctor required a medical license to practice by law, the AMA owned the thoughts and mind of the entire medical profession. This is how the AMA achieved the consent of all medical doctors by deceit. A medical doctor using a treatment that could threaten the mandate could be publicly criticized, marginalized, or undermined, or in some cases have their license revoked. And from this point, the medical and scientific fields, together with any elected political party, were both infiltrated and marginalized by the new economic foundation of the new medical economy. Over the last 60 years, the medical ozone scientific community worldwide has established a considerable volume of peer-reviewed clinical research that identifies the 4 primary mechanisms of action that indicate the possible therapeutic effects of ozone therapy. They are combined with thousands of independent studies by doctors and clinics that reference patient testimony, practitioner experience, and managed in a set protocol that includes biomarkers to determine ozone therapy's therapeutic effect. Despite this vast body of evidence, it does not validate the legitimacy of the properties of ozone therapy in the eyes of the scientific field, medical and pharmaceutical industry. Each clinical peer-reviewed paper approved has its limitations, highlighting that further extensive research is required to determine the therapeutic effects. To establish the clinical validation of medical ozone's therapeutic properties and to be accepted by the medical profession as a whole would require a pharmaceutical double-blind study approved by the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. This process from start to finish involves a multi-complex operation with many stages too involved for this introspection to discuss thoroughly. So, we are going to simplify 3 areas that determine the outcomes for making such a trial possible. 1. Patent ozone gas. 2. The need for R&D investment for the pharmaceutical double-blind trial. And 3. Is ozone therapy contravening the mandate set out by the AMA in 1933? So let's take point 1. Ozone gas is a pre-existing natural gas, and for this reason alone, it is not possible under the current laws, criteria and regulation for an ozone gas patent application to be approved. Thus, a single agent or pharmaceutical company cannot gain ownership to monopolize ozone gas. Now for point 2. In 2016, a study of drug development by the Tufts Center published in the Journal of Health Economics indicated the cost of developing just one drug from preclinical testing to market approval stands at an estimated $2.6 billion, with clinical trials being far the most expensive factor. Traditionally, the R&D investment for such a trial is generated by the pharmaceutical industry, government funds or grants, and health institutions. Now that we've established that ozone gas cannot be patented, no conglomerate would invest billions of dollars into a clinical double-blind trial to be approved by the FDA. Which leads us to point 3. Ozone therapy contravenes both aspects of the 1933 mandate. Ozone therapy undermines a wide range of pharmaceutical drugs currently in the market, and ozone therapy is deemed too competitive to approximately 30 to 50% of the drugs currently in the pharmaceutical market. Based on the criteria required for ozone therapy to be approved by the FDA, we can determine the following outcomes. Without a patent to monopolize ozone gas, no conglomerate would invest billions of dollars into a double-blind clinical trial. No conglomerate would openly undermine 30 to 50% of the drugs currently used in medicine, because ozone therapy would compete against 30 to 50% of the drugs currently in the pharmaceutical market, which is why the same conglomerate would not openly contradict the 1933 mandate. The ramifications of all these outcomes determines why ozone therapy's expectation to be approved cannot be met through the traditional routes for the medical profession to accept the therapeutic effects of ozone therapy, and hence why the medical profession is not able to use ozone therapy freely and openly to assist in patient management. If we were to entertain the idea that a charity such as the Gates Foundation was to invest in such a trial financially, the very act of making such an investment publicly known would cause a profound effect on the stock market pharmaceutical index. We would observe the collapse of these shares within days, given what we already know of the potential therapeutic effects of ozone therapy today. The damage and the financial loss to the pharmaceutical index would be irreversible. Collectively, this is why ozone therapy is constructively kept out of the public domain and officially dismissed and unapproved by the medical professions, medical professional bodies, health institutions, and government authorities. You see, we all have free will. That free will is an inherent right to have the freedom to make informed choices about our health, our well-being, or any other aspect of our life. Our sovereignty is our right to the freedom of choice, and unlike the medical profession, we must be aware not to give up our consent by deceit that could infringe on our sovereignty to uphold our rights to freedom of choice. That's why every health practitioner providing ozone therapy is intrinsically facilitating the public to exercise their freedom of choice to choose ozone therapy as a modality to support their health. Ozone therapy has surpassed the absurd phase, and it has entered the true but obvious and yet insignificant phase in the eyes of orthodox medicine. The statement is a contradiction at the very heart of its meaning, and yet it could be viewed as ironic. Ozone therapy could provide a very good solution in today's health crisis, and yet it will be met with the most considerable resistance to use its full potential. Once again, we see ozone therapy further compounded by the mandate set in 1933. Today, a practitioner who is qualified and trained in the field of ozone therapy must not only take on the responsibility for being openly criticized and undermined by any government body, medical or pharmaceutical authority, and any member of the public who are not educated or informed of the science and the practice of ozone therapy. Unfortunately, we all have to learn how to operate through the grey zones and strategically navigate the restrictions and limitations to practice ozone therapy freely within the current health paradigm. There is no one formula that fits all. Each country has its own laws, regulations, and compliancy that have to be taken into consideration. So depending where you are in the world will depend on how you will need to figure out how you're going to strategically navigate through these restrictions and limitations. If you're not prepared to take on the risks or take the initiative to deal with these restrictions and limitations, then reconsider whether practicing medical ozone is for you. But remember this, every professional practitioner who is providing ozone therapy today is taking these risks head on and maintaining a safe space for their patients to have treatment. I can't tell you the future, and I can't tell you how ozone therapy is going to be. I can tell you ozone therapy has entered an extraordinary period in its history, and based on the current health paradigm, will ozone therapy be ever accepted for its powerful therapeutic properties against disease and the prevention of disease, or will it be out of desperation of necessity? One thing I know for sure, that all medical doctors, natural health professionals, scientists and researchers who exemplify ozone therapy all know the effects, see all the benefits in our clinics, and collectively, as a natural consequence, will go on to test the boundaries of the current health dogma and continue to contribute to the science and innovation of ozone therapy for many years to come.